Dan. How are you? How's everybody?
Doing very well. Steve, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Very good, very good. Sound quality okay where you guys are?
I can hear you just fine. I hope everybody can hear me fine too.
Can hear you well, actually.
Okay.
Okay. So everybody else right now is on mute. The only people who are not muted currently are Tan and Steve. This is by design because we don't want this to be a clusterfuck of sorts. And yes, gentlemen, I swear when I talk to Tan and Steve, just like I swear when I talk to you guys, just relax. Basically, Tan, Steve, the group is looking to ask a few questions, maybe get some sort of updates and timelines on what's going on. I know there are questions about the S1. I know there are questions about Defiato, however you pronounce it, as well as the new letter of intent with PVcom Bank. Essentially, they're just looking for some direction. So I guess I'll let you guys take it away, sort of give whatever information would be considered public information, whatever you guys are allowed to share that legal's not going to crack heads about, and give whatever update you can, and then we'll open the floor for questions if that's all right.
Sure. All right. I will go first. It is a pleasure. Thank you, Dan, for organizing this call. It is a pleasure to be speaking to everybody. It has been a while, and I've actually been looking forward to speaking to everybody to give you some sort of an update. I know it's been kind of like quiet, and it's actually not by choice. I mean, we've been kind of like restrained by our legal not to say too much, not to disclose too much, just because of our pending S1. So today we'll try to be helpful. We'll try to give you as much information as possible without, obviously disclosing some confidential information. But first off, I want to do a quick recap on 2021. I mean, since we at the beginning of 2022 here, I mean, 2021 was quite a year for us. It was a year of change for VMNT in the sense that we basically pivoted from focusing on execution through our portfolio companies like Elon into doing things ourselves. Meaning that, I mean, you can see that with USDV, but there are also other components we're working on to complete our ecosystem. So in the case of like PVcom Bank, right, we've been actually been working with them since last summer. And obviously I've been quiet about it because it's confidential. PVcom Bank is a state-owned enterprise. So it's hard to get them to move fast because they do have a process to go through and where they have, they need everything to be approved by their board. And also we have competition. There are other fintech players who want to do business with PVcom Bank. But I mean, we'll go into that when we come to the Q&A session. But the idea here is that we've been hard at work to build up our ecosystem. And you saw a little bit of that in the USDB white paper. But there's a lot more behind the scenes that we obviously cannot, disclose. We like what we are. But before we go any deeper, let me introduce you to Steve, Steve Jones, our very, very capable CFO. Steve and I have known each other for about 3-4 years now. And we've been talking. And every time we talk is always about, brainstorming. How can we do, things different? How can we do things in such a way that, basically impacting lives of millions of people? Steve is a very rare species. I mean, is one of those that actually very well versed in U.S. capital markets. So he understands what the investors are looking for, capital partners are looking for, but also he has a very deep understanding and experience and knowledge at the ground level in Southeast Asia. And it's been quite a challenge to try to convince him to come and join us. But finally, he relented, and now he's with us. He's been, because due to COVID, I have not been able to travel to Southeast Asia. So Steve is actually operating out of Vietnam. He's in Ho Chi Minh City, and he's been very instrumental on what we're doing with PVcom Bank. So for this year, the focus for this year for us is about building up our fundamentals, meaning revenues and profits. And the ultimate goal here is for us to be on NASDAQ by the second half of this year. And with everything that we're doing, everything that we know, we're still on track. And I'm actually overly excited about our prospects for this year, and I hope everybody else is too. So with that, let me give the floor to Steve so Steve can say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today and working with Tan and working for you in terms of building out Vemanti and what we're trying to do in terms of expanding our ecosystem and building out what we hope is going to be a very exciting fintech platform going forward. I'm sure over the next year or so, you'll be hearing a lot more from me as I get more embedded in what we're doing. I will probably be providing more information to you as we go forward during this time, particularly as we move forward with PVcom Bank, Defiato, and a few other things in terms of what we're looking to do. So it's a pleasure to meet everybody, and look forward to speaking with the group going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Steve. Thank you, Tan. All right, I guess first and foremost, one thing I picked up on, not everybody works in Vietnam, Southeast Asia, China. Can you explain, Tan, what a state-owned enterprise is for those who may not know?
Sure. A state-owned enterprise is essentially a government-owned entity, right? It has some private ownership, but the government still controls the majority of the ownership structure. This is just a way for government-owned entities to be privatized, but for the most part, they're still very much operating under the guidelines of the government. And why is that essential for an entity like PVcom Bank? That means they have very, very close ties with the state bank, who basically dictates the policies. And where we're going with this is that we're essentially becoming a bank with this relationship. I mean, in a nutshell, right? That's the key takeaway here. We're essentially becoming a bank, and operating on top of PVcom Bank will allow us to prove ourselves for a few years, and then we can seek to have direct licensing from the state bank. And I also expect that the State Bank of Vietnam, many central banks, will eventually put crypto blockchain under their regulatory framework as well. So we'll be in a very good position to be able to secure such a license when the time comes. But stepping back a little bit, why is Vietnam important? Why is Southeast Asia important, right? We're here, and just to put it bluntly, we're here in the US. Well, why should I care about Vietnam? Why should I care about Southeast Asia? Well, Southeast Asia is a major global economic driver. It is responsible for about 30% of the world's GDP. In terms of total GDP for the region, is about 3.4 trillion dollars. That's kind of on par with the US. There's about 60 million people, a very young, educated workforce. With what's going on with between, and I don't want to get all political, but the reality is that a lot of with what's going on between China and the U.S., a lot of companies are moving south to Southeast Asia, and that means that by us working with companies, SMEs at the ground level in Vietnam and also Southeast Asia. And why do I keep saying Vietnam and then Southeast Asia? Because the social economic structure in a lot of Southeast Asian countries are very, very similar, meaning that if you deploy a solution in Vietnam, it can be considered also regional. It's very easy to expand to other countries. If you look at companies like C Limited, the ticker is SE. You look at Grab, I mean, exactly that's what they have. And also, by the way, people on Wall Street are now starting to pay attention to what's going on in Southeast Asia, and you're starting to see a lot of SPAC deals, and a lot of companies Southeast Asia are starting to go public on Nasdaq, also New York Stock Exchange. But the point I'm trying to make here is that by helping the entrepreneurs and also the SMEs at the ground level in Southeast Asia, we are in fact also directly helping the U.S. economy, because there's a lot of this economies, Vietnam specifically, is very export driven, and the U.S. is the #1 market for Vietnam. So we are also in a way helping a lot of American companies as well, helping bring them to Southeast Asia and Vietnam. So that's in a nutshell that that's why we're focusing on Vietnam.
And that's regarding product delivery and logistics and cross-border payment options, etc.
Correct. I mean, the U.S. is the #1 trade partner for Vietnam at this point. For the longest time, it was other countries, but the U.S. is now the #1 trade partner for Vietnam. So there are a lot of companies in Vietnam doing business in the U.S. and vice versa. There are a lot of companies in the U.S. doing business in Vietnam as well. So the one product that we're focusing on, everything we do is about lending and payments. So the one particular product that we'll be focusing on is invoice financing or factoring. And I'll let Steve speak to that. Steve?
You have to unmute yourself, Steve.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so when you look at what small to medium-sized enterprises need in Southeast Asia in order to grow, is they need capital, primarily working capital. And one of the ways to provide that to them is that when they build and make a product for sale, and about 85% of the products that small to medium-sized enterprises make in Vietnam and even Southeast Asia are for export to developed markets, whether it's North America or Europe, or some of the other Asia developed markets like Japan and South Korea. They need working capital, and one of the ways to provide working capital is to lend against the containers that they ship to the developed markets, because oftentimes the payment terms for these companies is upwards of 60 to 90 days. And if you have another 30 days where it takes you to build the product for shipment, that is, anywhere between 3 to 4 months of working capital that you have to have, which oftentimes these companies don't have. So one of the ways that we are looking to help them is that when they ship something, instead of them getting paid 60 days after they ship or 90 days after they ship, we'll pay them upon shipment, and then we'll collect the payment on their behalf from the buyers in the developed markets. And a good example of a big buyer in Vietnam is Nike, believe it or not. If you probably go look at some of your Nike clothes, your Nike shoes, you'll see that they're made in Vietnam. Nike does a lot of business here, but they also have pretty difficult payment terms for many of the vendors here. Nike is 75-day payment terms. And if you can think of that in terms of working capital, where you might be shipping 200 or 300 containers a month with a value of about $50,000, that's a lot of money that gets tied up where you're not being paid after you've made it. And so this is where we're looking to help these companies grow by advancing them the funds once they complete their goods, and then helping them to collect quicker using some of our payment options that we're looking at building into the Vemanti ecosystem.
Hey,
so
Steve,
that's
can I interrupt you for one
Sure.
second? Just very
Sure,
quickly.
I'm done.
No, don't be. No, you're not done. I promise you, you're not done. We're just getting warmed up here. But I just wanted to submit for the masses that are on the call that we should have a drinking game where we should do a shot every time your phone dings.
Oh, yeah, I better turn the, sorry, that's everybody. It's all the notes coming up in Telegram. Sorry about that.
That's a good thing. We'll be real happy and relaxed by the end of the call if we do that.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we're gonna have to issue a board resolution to make sure that your phones are off during investor call, Steve.
Yeah. No, sorry about that. Well, I thought you were going to have a board resolution where I was supposed to have shots in front of me during an investor call. But
let's maintain our professionalism here.
Sure.
Oh, that's been out the window for months since I took over this Telegram, so you can put that out the window now.
All right.
So, continue.
So that's I mean, it's just a little bit. I mean, so Steve touched a little bit on what we're doing as the first product coming out of the gate with PVcom Bank, but obviously we're planning for a lot more than that. I mean, the relationship with PVcom Bank, is a lot more than just lending and payments, right? Because PVcom Bank is basically looking at us to help them transform themselves into digital bank as well. Now, why would a bank like PVcom Bank need us? Okay, PVcom Bank, just like other banks, I mean, they're very much consumer centric. I mean, they know how to cater to consumers. They know very little about how to serve the SME space. And that's where we come in. That's what we've been doing for the last, 4 years through eLoan. Right. Earlier, I was saying that, we're kind of moving away from doing things to our portfolio companies to gain knowledge and market know-how, but now we're actually doing it ourselves. That's the reason why you got other players, like actually players coming in from Thailand and Singapore wanting to partner up with PVcom Bank to be a digital bank in Vietnam, but instead, we knocked everybody out because of our, know-how at the ground level. And specifically, this is what PVcom Bank is expecting our relationship. But it's beyond that, because they also like our stablecoin and many, things that we're doing. And it fits in nicely with their vision. Because they know that traditional...
Tan, take a sec. We can't talk about stablecoin or USDV, as that project is on hold, so we don't want to get into that if we don't have to. And just a reminder for the men and women on the phone, there are no questions with regards to stablecoin project USDV. That's all on hold for the time being, as you are well aware, based on the amended S1. So if we could move on from that, Tan, I'd appreciate it.
No. I mean, that project is on hold, but the underlying technology can still be utilized. What we gain from the exercise can still be gained for our enclosed ecosystem, right? That's what we're looking at. But I mean, and let's just segue into the topic of USDV. I'm sure everybody wants to know what's going on with USDV. I mean, if you have read our filing, we're basically essentially officially on hold with USDV until there's a clear regulatory framework in place. But that doesn't really impede our planning, because we're still, again, I mean, USDV is just one component. We're looking at building out an inclusive financial ecosystem here. And we're doing things like, things we haven't talked about, our components. So, of course, everybody's aware of USDV, and now we're talking about PVcom Bank. But we're also looking at, how we, let's say from operational standpoint, how can we be capital and tax efficient by looking at establishing entities, places, let's say Singapore, where they have tax incentives to do kind of in region trading, things like that. I mean, it's all essential to our ecosystem. But the bottom line here is we're very excited about this relationship with PVcom Bank, and we expect great things from this. And now, in terms of when do we expect to go live with PVcom Bank, obviously I cannot give you a date on that, but I can tell you is that we're working very, very hard towards a definitive agreement. Both parties have vested interest to make this happen. As a matter of fact, I mean, Steve is on his way to Hanoi to finalize the agreement. So we are, with all intents and purposes, we are going to be a digital bank. So that's I think earlier you said, Dan, a little bit on PVcom Bank, and then you also wanted to talk about the S1, right?
I know you're going to have 1,000 questions about the S1. You might as well address it now and get it out of the way, and then we'll have some follow-up questions for you.
Sure. I mean, it's simple. I mean, you see what I see. I mean, we're waiting for the SEC to come back to us. It has taken a long time, but at the same time, you can see by our filing, by our amended filing, it's very lengthy. There were a lot of comments, and then you got, you factor in also the holidays. So we have nudged them a little bit, and let's just see what happened. It has, it has been more than 30 days, so we do expect to hear back from the SEC anytime now. Now, the next question is, okay, well, once we have the S1 clear, what's next? The idea of doing an S1 is to get the company, sufficiently capitalized so we can actually execute our business plans. So we do have, capital partners lined up already, committed to, filling up the S1 for us. So that's all I can share at this point. And so, unless you have specific questions that I will try my best to respond.
Tan, just so you know, I have enlightened them to the fact that we've had a couple of groups that I brought in and groups that came in independently that have actually offered to fund the S1 at a premium without getting specific with regards to the numbers. So they are aware of that. Obviously, it's dependent upon where we trade, what happens between, now and the S1 approval as far as the price of the stock. How much you're looking to raise, if that expands, if that decreases, based on your needs.
Yeah. Again, first thing first is to get it cleared, and then we'll work on pricing. Obviously, the higher the price, the less shares we have to give away. But regardless, the ultimate goal here is to basically to get the capital in so we can get, we'll be off to the races in terms of launching our digital banking project here, and also other projects that we haven't talked about. And earlier you talked about Defiato. So we look at Defiato. Should we talk about Defiato, or should we? You want me to talk about it?
Cat's out of the bag. Let it go.
So we look at Defiato, and Defiato, I've been talking to the founder of Defiato. I've actually known him for a few years. They are aspired to be the Coinbase of Southeast Asia, and we look at them as distribution point for a couple things.
You described them to me as a Coinbase killer.
Well, that's quite a statement, but they aspire to be the Coinbase of Southeast Asia and beyond. How's that? But in terms of synergy and partnership, I mean, Defiato, we look at them as a partner that we can lean on for a couple of things. Number one is a distribution point for our future stablecoin, and number two is a staking partner, meaning that they will specifically set up a staking product specifically only for Vemanti, where they fully commit. They're willing to fully commit to giving the entire funding from the staking platform to Vemanti to do lending in the ground level. It's interesting you asked about that, Defiato, because Steve actually was the champion behind taking that staking product and land it out. I mean, how do we dispose that? How do we deploy that at ground level? Because if you look at staking products out in crypto and blockchain right now is mostly just an arbitrage and speculative trading. But to sustain this, you actually need to deploy to real borrowers, specifically business borrowers. So that's the one thing that Steve was working with Defiato on. Steve, do you want to just enlighten us a little bit on that?
So basically, if you, as Tan had mentioned, when you look at these staking platforms, they're taking advantage of people trying to arbitrage across different platforms and so forth. And so you'll see, you see a lot of wild fluctuations in terms of returns. You see a lot of people lose a lot of money this way. What I spoke with Defiato about is to put together a sustainable rate of return for their staking platform. And it's really focused on doing something that's pretty time honored, which is making loans to businesses and doing so in a way that's as safe as you can make it based upon a risk adjusted basis. And so, when we look again at, invoice financing, for example, and looking at making loans to small to medium-sized enterprises for real estate, being able to do this to do this at scale and to do this at a pricing which could be higher than what an investor could potentially get in the market, but less than what they're currently paying today, makes a very sustainable staking option for Defiato, one that most other platforms would not have. Because again, most other platforms are just playing in the currency market, the cryptocurrency market. We're talking about taking this money and putting it to real use. And when you look at loans have no correlation to the bond market or the stock market. And so from this standpoint, it makes it a nice alternative investment for people that are staking, that want to have a higher rate of return than they could normally get, but also one that's done where it might be able to offset what's happening in the market in terms of either stocks or bonds that they're also investing in. So it offers another alternative investment for their portfolio.
And it's a sustainable one.
Exactly, it's sustainable.
Yeah, and that's how we look at everything, Dan and everybody. Is like for example, NFTs, right? It is a buzzword, and everybody's claiming so high on NFTs. When we look at blockchain and stablecoin is no different. It's like Steve and I, we come together and say, how do we utilize the technology to help real people and real businesses? So, for instance, we've also had discussion with Defiato about creating NFTs for the SMEs. I mean, how can they tokenize real world assets as collateral to borrow against, right? I mean, sure. I mean, creating a non-fungible token, our TikTok video is cool, but I mean, if you have a business to run, I mean, how do you how can you create an NFT to sustain your business and to pay your employees and also your vendors? So that's some of the things we always
against a real asset. Yeah, against a real asset, not some, not a piece of art or someone's cartoon or something someone made up. An NFT against a real asset.
Correct, because now you open things up on a global scale. You see, because now anybody can borrow from anybody. I mean, you being here can now lend to somebody, knowing that they're actually collateralized by real assets. Now, but here's the kicker. Okay, so everybody talks about decentralization. Okay, I don't believe in total decentralization. We need some sort of governance. There got to be a trusted third party, a regulate third party, to be blunt, right? So that's why we're looking to be a bank ourselves. Because guess what? If you're lending somebody at the ground level in Vietnam, you don't need to know who they are. All you need to know is that there's a bank in between that's actually holding the asset and the collateral for you. Okay, and that's what some of the things we're looking at by becoming a bank. It's not as simple as, oh, we're looking to be a bank because it's cool to be a bank, or so we can offer free checking or savings to all these people. It's beyond that. How do we collaborate with people like Defiato, and then converge, right? Converge all the technologies with existing regulation, at the same time put ourselves in a position where we'll future proof for whatever comes next. So we have very 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 deep conversations with Defiato. It's beyond blockchain. It's beyond NFT. It's about, okay, how do we intertwine everything they do with what we do, in terms of combining blockchain and traditional capital markets and regulation. And obviously, the way we do that, and to have an impact, also it's nice to have conversation to have an impact. How do we, make sure that, what we talk about, what do we discuss get, executed? Well, the best way to do that is to become a shareholder and, have some operational influence over what they do. So we're working towards that. And that's all I can share about what we're doing with Defiato at this point until everything becomes official.
Very good. Now, there are other elements of that particular equation with regards to Alpha, the parent company, Defiato. Do you want to touch on any of that and where the synergy is there?
Defiato is a brand name, behind the exchange. But the actual company, the parent company, is called Alpha Technologies. They incorporated in Singapore.
What are the other subsidiaries, and what are the synergies between Vemanti and the other subsidiaries of Alpha?
No, they only have, basically just one, Defiato. That's it. So the Defiato is the brand, but Alpha Technology is the company. And and we have also touched on the topic. They also aspire to go NASDAQ, so they can do that through several venues, right? They can do that themselves, or they can actually possibly become part of Vemanti. That's some of the topics what we have touched on.
Okay.
That's still early. Is the first thing first is let's get things going, and obviously, when we say get things going, let's focus on revenue generating projects and products, right, for both parties.
Gotcha. All right. I want to get one question across before we open the floor to questions, because there's one very important question that I know everybody wants an answer to. When Lambo? You're not familiar with that one, huh?
Lambo, is it Lamborghini?
Yeah, they want to know when Lambo.
I don't have an answer for that. I'm sorry.
When I open up the floor, they'll explain that a little more for you. So do you want, if you'd like, I can queue them up. They are able in this particular app to essentially raise a hand and let me know that they want to ask a question. There's a little little fella icon in the right side next to their name that tells me they would like to ask a question. So if you guys want to queue up your questions now, and I can click on them one at a time, allow you to ask your question. You can allow them to respond to the question. Tan will let you know if it's him that should respond to that particular question, or Steve. And once you've asked your question, I'm going to mute you. Please don't do 4 and 5 and 6 part questions. We have a limited amount of time. The CEO and CFO were nice enough to take the time out to talk to you. Let's get the important questions out of the way. Let's keep it somewhat succinct and professional if we can.
Yeah, speaking of time, we just to let everybody know, we have about 20 minutes, and then we have to jump on another call.
All right.
So I apologize in advance.
That's right. I'm going to open up the floor to questions now. We've got a couple ready to go. Are you ready?
I'm ready. We're ready. Yeah.
Here we go. Go ahead, Jake.
Hey,
Jake,
Tan. Hey, Steve.
Hey.
Daniel, how you doing?
Good.
Been a shareholder for a long time. Really excited for the company. I really appreciate you guys coming on, and it's I enjoyed everything you guys said. I have one question, and I believe it was already answered, and that's just when Lambo?
Steve, do you want to answer that, Steve? You are the CFO. It sounds to me like getting a Lambo takes money, and you are the guy in charge of money.
Give us, I guess the general question is, when are we going to have, as far as a general time frame, when are we going to be generating some revenue that would translate into obviously fundamentals that would allow us to build the stock price?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, we're really looking at this year. It will be a lot of investment. So, I mean, I would expect us to start generating revenue on, the core business associated with PVcom Bank this year. We will be spending, a lot of investment to build out the platform. But you would expect to see revenue this year and start to see how the business would react. But you will also see a large amount of capital investment in terms of building out the platform. And then going into next year, you would start to see the fundamentals probably in 2023 start to get better and better as the investment that we made in the platform would start to pay off in 2023, 2024 in terms of what we would expect to see.
Okay. And in terms of if we had a group that was coming in for a relatively substantial investment that would go directly towards the balance sheet, obviously that would affect the stock price as well. Say, if we have a $500 million, $1 billion investor that goes direct to the balance sheet, that will reflect in the stock price as well, right? Because it goes on the balance sheet as an asset. Okay.
Correct. And the money that comes in from the S1 will be pushed into this platform with PVcom Bank to expand it at a very rapid pace. We're the first in the market, so what we want to do is we want to take the fact that we're first in the market. We want to build on that as quickly as possible to build a moat around what we're doing, to make it harder for other people to come in and compete with us. And that's really going to be the focus of 2022. And it is very difficult to find partners in Vietnam, particularly those partners that are forward thinking enough to really understand what a fintech platform can do for them. So I think that the first mover advantage and the fact that we can build this out quickly will really help us to have good, strong fundamentals coming out of the end of the year and into the beginning of 2023.
Perfect.
Yeah. Let me add to that a little bit. I mean, so as soon as we have the agreement in place with PVcom Bank, we'll be able to operate, out of a fully compliant framework to be able to deploy some of the lending operations while we're building out our digital platform. But also another thing that we haven't talked about is that, after we have launched our digital platform and have proven ourselves to be, capable of doing this, that PVcom Bank is actually planning on lining up smaller banks behind us as well, right? So in terms of going back to the emphasis on revenues and profits, I mean, earlier I said that 2022 is all about building up the fundamentals, because why? I mean, you're gearing up to go to NASDAQ. We need to have fundamentals in place, and we'll be able to do that, as soon as our S1 is done. And the nice thing about coming out the gate with a lending product is that you don't need a lot of, equity capital, right? You only need a certain amount to get the operation up and running, but then you can take on debt capital, because basically you're borrowing low and lending out high, and that give us the ability to generate tremendous revenues and profits to fulfill our goals of being fundamentally sound for this year. Now, in terms of from the top looking down, what does that do for our overall valuation? I mean, you can just look at some of the crazy valuation they put around neobanks these days. I mean, that will give you an idea. Obviously, I have an idea, where I want us to be. I mean, I think that after we have launched our digital platform, and also with our revenues and revenue streams going, I think we'll be touching on like unicorn territory here, or maybe even more. That's the hope.
Okay, let's get a couple more questions in before we lose anybody here. Hang on. Okay, Douglas McGill.
Yes. Hi, Ann. Hi, Steve. I really appreciate the communications through many channels that Vemanti is providing. I have rarely seen this with a company that I've invested in. But my question is there any plan for maybe a Berkshire-style investor meeting, or maybe in the future, maybe it's still soon now, where we can meet some of the people we've been friends with for a few years and make some idea generation and get to know each other and get closer to the company?
Oh, definitely. Thank you, Doug. And actually, it's a pleasure, Doug. I mean, you and I exchanged messages a few times, but it's always nice to hear an actual voice, right? Yeah, we would love to have put together an investor conference, and we would love to actually do it at ground level, in Vietnam, so you guys can come and see what's happening. Because you can only read so much about it, and you can only hear through us so much, but at the ground level, you will see. I mean, why we're so high in Vietnam is kind of like, you want to look at the progression and some of the developments going on in Vietnam. Just look at China about 20 years back, 25 years back, and you can kind of predict what's going to happen to Vietnam. I mean, it is, becoming that critical economic driver on a global scale. But yeah, we'd love to do it here in California. I am here in Los Angeles, so we can do one here. But I think doing one in Vietnam would really open up everyone's horizons.
Yeah. By the way, Tan, Doug is the one that introduced SMH Capital for us.
Oh, thank you, Doug.
You're welcome. It's my honor. And if we have a meeting in Los Angeles or Vietnam, I'll be there.
Yeah, we're there. I mean, love to host anybody. And if you don't have to wait until we have an organized trip, right? If you have some free time, you want to come there, just let us know. We have people at the ground level that can take care of our VMNT investors.
All right. Any more questions? We had a couple guys queued up, and they kind of disappeared. Anybody else that had a question? Where'd you go? There you go, James. There you are. I lost you for a minute there. All right, James, go ahead.
Hey, Tan. Hey, Steve. Just want to say
Hi, James,
for hosting and having this call with us. So my quick question was related to DeFi and Defiato. So right now, if someone wants to engage in these DeFi protocols, generally they have to over-collateralize their loans, meaning they basically have to put up 120% of the capital they're looking to borrow. And a lot of critics are saying that makes DeFi not really feasible in the real world. With the partnership with PVcom Bank as well as with Defiato, what would a loan look like, or how would DeFi look in this Vemanti framework? Will there still be over collateralization, or will there not be collateral requirements for DeFi to happen?
Yeah, well, over collateralization can never work, can never be sustainable, right? So, I mean, and the reason why they require over collateralization is because of the volatility around cryptocurrencies, and that's not how things work in the real world. I mean, you have a lot of very good businesses at the ground level. You simply cannot determine to give them a loan or not based on the amount of collateral they can put up. It has to be all based on the sector they're in, their cash flow, and many elements. So on one hand, over collateralization doesn't work on DeFi, but then the question becomes, how do we insert the SMEs or the actual borrowers into the DeFi ecosystem? So we actually have talked about this with people at Defiato, and I think the way to do that is to make sure that there's some sort of an independent third party to certify that this is a legit borrower, right? But you do it in such a way that is not so disruptive to the overall principle around DeFi. And that's what we're looking at. I think by becoming a bank ourselves, that we'll be able to insert ourselves, and being that we're also, a shareholder and a partner with Defiato, that we'll be able to offer that piece. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Tan. Appreciate the answer.
Thank you, James. By the way, James, we talked about me coming on to your show, right? We're still going to do that. Do you still have a spot for me?
I would want nothing more, Tan. That'd be great.
Looking forward to James.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything else, Dan?
Hello. Thank you for this opportunity. And man, I just got a whole. I feel a lot better. This call made me a lot better. I feel a lot better. I feel like communication is key, and this is some real good communication. Anyways, one thing I wanted to say is that I doubt anyone else would say this is a confidence to build from the shareholders. I feel like a lot of guys in here have thrown in $100,000 in the company. I feel like if you as a CEO, obviously you can talk to the SEC, and I understand the S10 and all that good stuff. You don't want to be considered manipulating the stock or anything like that. But if you were to throw $25,000 in the stock at the current price, that would show future shareholders and investors that, hey, the CEO cares. And this is rare in this game, in the trading game, because most insiders are selling, and there's a lot of scams. So you show people, hey, VMNT is not a scam.
Rich, that's not something you can address. Form 4s, insider buying, selling, trading, that kind of. You can't address that on a public conference call. You can't ask questions about that, and he can't answer questions about that on a public call, because any of that would be non-public information till a Form 4 is filed.
Well, yeah, he can do that. He can file it ahead of time before he does it. That's all. That's right. That's what attorneys are.
All right. Anybody else have a question? We've got about 8 minutes left before they have to bail on us.
Dan, I have another question if no one else wants to ask.
James, go ahead.
Okay. So, Tan, back in 2020, there were talks about acquiring a stake in Marina Gold. It seems that deal has fell through. Do you happen to know why it fell through, and if Vemanti is still looking to get into the precious metals game, or not really?
Well, we look at precious metals in general, gold or silver, as real assets that can be tokenized, right? Like the US dollar is an asset that can be tokenized. Case in point, our USDV. So when we look at Marina Gold, I mean, the thought was, okay, well, here's, something that, that's kind of like time tested. How can we tokenize this? And the idea behind it, how can we tokenize it so allow people to trade, to pair up with currency like USD? So you will have a trading pair of USD and let's say, gold, right? To facilitate cross-border transactions. And then that thought is still alive. I mean, the unfortunate thing that happened with Marina Gold is just they had two. I don't know if anybody's been reading about what's happening in Mali, but they had two coups, right? I mean, so we had to pull back based on that. And then we also started looking at, potential partners in Australia and Armenia, and that have not, gone the way we like. But to answer your question, I mean, we're looking at gold, we're looking at USD, we're looking at also creating stable coins for other currencies as well, like the Japanese yen or the euro. I mean, at the end of the day, international trade doesn't evolve around just USD or gold, right? You have to kind of like create trading pairs. So if anybody's familiar with international trade, I mean, the challenge right now is that let's say, okay, let's take an actual real case here. If somebody, a merchant in Vietnam, if they want to do business with somebody here in the US, they have to buy the USD, okay, to pay somebody in the US. And when somebody in the US pays them, they basically don't get to keep the USD. They have to convert that into the local currency. So by creating a trading pair, let's say VND, which is the Vietnamese currency, and USD, now you allow them to hedge against the fluctuation around FX. Because right now the way you do it to cross-border transactions is that you're only allowed to buy USD at the time on maybe maximum 2-3 months ahead of time, but not a year or two. But by creating stablecoin pairs, now you allow them to hedge by themselves, right? And now also you look at what's happening in the U.S. economy. If there have been talks about raising interest rates, that even gives people more incentive to basically just start hedging against the USD. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad to hear that the company is very concerned about these developments that are happening. Tan, I had another question. This is just, again, kind of referencing a tweet you had. It was really
into make that the last question because they've got 4 minutes.
All right, sounds good. It was really into a merger and acquisition tweet. The tweet was dated, I think, March 16th, 2021. It talked about an acquisition with 2 million plus users. You're looking to close by the end of Q2 of 2021. Do you happen to have any updates with what happened there, or what was the company that you were talking with? Love to hear it.
Yeah, that topic is still alive. I mean, we're negotiating with the founders. It's been a back and forth process because, I mean, the reality is that, we're going to do some real DD on them, and then we get hit with COVID, right? And now, I mean, we're back. Everybody's back at the table. We're talking about that again. And then the overall picture here is that, okay, does it even make sense? They do have 2 million users, by the way. So, I mean, that is the real asset, right? But it's mostly on the consumer side. And Steve actually spent a lot more time with them. But the thinking now is like, well, we're looking at acquire them for their user base and also what they built out. But then if we become a digital bank ourselves and we like SME focused, does it even still make sense to acquire them? What can they offer now versus like 12 months ago, right? So they're still pretty much interested in being part of us, right? So no doubt about it, they still very much interested in being a part of us. The question now, do we still want to acquire them? And that's what we are.
Got it. Thank you, Tan.
All right. Now, last question for you, Tan. If we have a certain amount of direct investment and a certain amount of stock appreciation, say, I don't know, $5, somewhere in that range, it is still feasible to accomplish a NASDAQ uplist sometime early to mid second quarter of this year, correct?
Well, there are many ways that, yeah, that's one way, but there are many ways that you can qualify for NASDAQ, and, our legal team and also, the people we work with, I mean, we're still, we're working on that.
Okay.
So we're not sitting here waiting, okay, well, let's, June comes around. This is now we're in the second half, right? The end of June. So let's we are looking at that right now already. And to see how we can realign our resources to make that happen.
Excellent. All right. Gentlemen, I appreciate the time. I know you've got another call to get on to. The guys appreciate and the girls appreciate the time you've taken today. It's always a pleasure to have some communication, but this kind of unfettered access is pretty damn rare with any publicly traded company, particularly with the CEO and CFO on the same call when you're not presenting to 85 investment banks who already have their checkbooks out. So this has been terrific, and we do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I want to thank everybody for being a part of our journey in ways large and small. A lot of you have been with us for a long time, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So on behalf of the team at Vemanti Group, we wish you all the best for 2022. And last but not least, thank you, Dan. I know, regardless how people feel about you professionally, and this is for everybody too, regardless how you feel about him professionally, Dan is a good man. I mean, he takes care of his 3 daughters, and to me, anybody who goes out their way to take care of their children is a good person. Thank you, Dan.
Appreciate that. And I'm not going to stop being an asshole. I'm going to keep doing my job. Eventually, Tan, I'm going to own the whole float. Whatever's on DTCs, whatever's floating out there, we're going to get it all. And we're going to be there to support you long term. I promise you that.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Have a good night, gentlemen. Thank you. Take care.